Hey guys, Zero from eGaming Network here. This video is pretty much just going to be about the 5 Australian teams and the 1 New Zealand team that have qualified for APAC. I feel like since COD Champs last year, there have been a lot more NA and EU viewers that want to follow the scene, but it's pretty difficult, and a lot of people will struggle to keep up with rosters and teams and stuff like that. So this video is pretty much just going to break down each team and how they got through the qualifiers, how they performed in the qualifiers, the storylines leading up to it, and their rosters, and what each team is good at and stuff like that. So just the basic details. So starting things off with Trident, they were the first team to qualify through the Australian first qualifier. Their roster is Maka, Azzy, MBS, and Hysteria. They're pretty much a roster that's been playing for years. They're veterans of the game, essentially. Maka and MBS competed together under Mindfreak in 2013, and they went to COD Champs to represent Australia then, so this will be the second time they can possibly be going. They're incredibly strong at S&D, so look for these guys to take games off all the other teams when it comes to S&D. They're incredibly strong. Maka is an absolute god in S&D and probably the scariest player to play against when it comes to S&D in Australia. So the second team to qualify on day one, to no one's surprise, is Plantronics Mindfreak. This is a team that was formerly known as Team Immunity and have competed at COD Champs the last 2 years in a row. And prior to that, were also known for their pretty much uncontested dominance over the Australian scene for multiple years. As far as their lineup goes, they've got one change. The lineup is now Buzzin, Fighter, Shocks, and Dens, as opposed to Naked, who decided to step down from his core roster position to take more of a backseat role in coaching and management, which, as far as I know, is due to lack of enjoyment of the game or something along those lines. This will be the first year they're ever competing in an international event with their core four. They've always had to have a sub for Fighter, who was too young to compete. As far as the qualifiers went for them, there isn't much of a story to tell. They pretty much blitzed through the whole thing flawlessly, and then finally 3-0'd Endzone to qualify for the APAC regionals. So following up after Mindfreak, X5T1 were the next team to qualify. They're the team that was formerly known as T1 Dotters and are now representing the Australian organisation XL5. The roster is Izze, Damage, Chileans, and Fate, and it still features 3 of the 4 players that competed at COD Champs last year under Trident T1, who later on in the year went on to become Curse Australia. So Fate is the one rounding out the lineup in replace of Dens. He's this kind of up-and-coming player that won the last major event in Australia, ACL Sydney, under his former team, Team Storm. And he's kind of recently broken into the top tier of players. He's been around for a while, and now he's kind of shining and competing among the top tier. As far as the qualifiers went, they had an incredibly tough run through a difficult side of the bracket. They went up against Integral first, who they defeated 3-2 in a nail-biting set before losing to Trident 2-3. Following that, they came through in the losers bracket, defeated Endzone to qualify, and they were the last team to qualify on day one. So the first team to qualify on day 2 was Integral. They're kind of another roster that's full of experience, with Bundo, Hoju, and Valsider all qualifying for the Australian finals last year on separate teams. Quins was the only one who actually didn't attend the qualifiers last year. Despite this roster being chock full of talent, Bundo received by far the most attention throughout the entirety of the qualifiers. He absolutely went off in most game modes, and thus this hashtag on Twitter, Bill Wall, started trending, which is obviously a play on the Optic Gaming's Green Wall. He absolutely dominated throughout the weekend, so the hashtag was rightly deserved. This team is incredibly strong at respawn game modes, particularly uplink. Their final game of the qualifiers, they won 20-3 on comeback in uplink. So just look for this team to take out those respawn game modes. They're not particularly... They shouldn't outshine other teams at S&D, but their respawn game modes are what's going to get them through the qualifiers, if anything. So the second team to qualify on day 2, and the final Australian team that's going to be playing at APAC, is Avant. which is Hopi, Benno, Kui, and Dean. This is the second year this team's playing together. Dean's in the place of Vilesider though, as opposed to last year. And this team kind of comes from an extensive history in Halo. Hopi and Benno were both top in the Australian scene, probably two of the very best players. Benno went overseas multiple times to compete at MLG, including playing in the pro bracket at MLG Anaheim 2011 for Reach, which I'm pretty sure was one of the first times, or the first time, we ever saw a foreign team reach pro bracket at MLG. So as far as last year went, they placed third, narrowly missing out on going to LA. This team kind of has a third place curse about them. They always place third at LAN events and stuff like that, so they'll be looking to break that curse at this qualifier. As far as the qualifiers went for them this year, they had an incredibly rough day one, but bounced back on day two with a vengeance. Hopi was on fire throughout the entire day, and he even claimed the best S&D score of the entire weekend, going 14-5 against Citadel. So the final team I'll be covering today is the team that's going to be representing New Zealand at APAC, which is the team formerly known as Ignitions, which is now XS Gaming upon being picked up by a North American organisation. Going into the qualifiers, they were actually coming off a LAN victory at AVT, which is New Zealand's kind of premier LAN circuit. The roster is Killerpie, Carrots, Zeus, and Buckerbeck. This team is kind of like the dark horse of the competition. It's a bit hard to judge off their online results just how good they are because of just the host differential online between New Zealand and Australia. But these guys have been getting valued really highly by a lot of people, and a lot of people reckon that they can go the whole way. They already have plenty of LAN experience under the belts. They've won multiple AVT LANs by my understanding, and as far as the qualifiers went, they absolutely qualified in the best way possible, meeting the last year's representatives of New Zealand in the grand final, Flair, where they defeated them 3-0 to take the spot for New Zealand. So that wraps up my first video, guys. I just want to thank you all for watching. First off, I just want to say, looking back on the video, there's a lot of stuttering, a lot of ums, a lot of ers. Basically, I hope to rectify this in the future, but in this video I really hope that the information and insight into these teams that I provided really makes up for it in a way. I didn't expect to do this first video flawlessly, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to improve on that in the future. So I just want to thank you all for watching, and I'll be leaving a bunch of links in the description of the video with links to the teams and links to my personal Twitter as well as my eGaming Network profile if you want to read any of my previous articles on all the teams and stuff leading up to the event. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.